In this video, we're going to look at the process of binding collections of objects to our views. To start out, we'll go ahead and create a new project. We'll choose a web project, ASP.NET. This will be our Module 6 project. Choose an empty project with MVC. No authentication, and we'll host it locally. So inside of this project, we're going to create a model class, and we'll just call it our user model or user view model. And then in our controllers, we'll right click, add new controller, and this will be an empty controller, and we'll call this our home controller. Then we'll have our index view on our home controller. Now, flipping back over to our user view model, we're going to add a series of properties: first name, last name, email, and we'll go ahead and do password as well. So that'll be our user view model. And then the goal here is that we're going to have a view, and in this view we want to be able to pass a collection of users. So to do that, we're going to start off by creating a list of user view model. And I'll do my using statement, and we'll say this is a collection of users. Now, typically for adding a collection of items to this list, you'd probably do something like collection of users.add, and then you'd say new user view model, and then you have to create a bunch of users. Using collections within C#4 and above, you actually have the ability to do what are called inline instantiations, and we can also inline instantiate our collections. Now, if we were going to inline instantiate a single object, we would do user view model user object, that would be our variable, equals new user view model. And you've kind of seen me do this before, and we'll do curly brackets. And by doing the curly brackets instead of the parentheses, it'll allow us to go in and actually do kind of a key value or property value listing to instantiate or initialize our object. So first name here would be Kevin, comma, last name, Gantos, email, and you can just go through and set all of that up, password. So we've now kind of initialized or instantiated this one user object. And then from here we would say collection of users.add user object. But if we want to add more than one, we'd either have to go through that process multiple times, or the other option is that we can actually do these inline initializations for a collection. So after we say, if we go back up to line 15, list user view model, and then our collection of users variable, we say new list with parentheses and a semicolon. I'm going to drop the semicolon, and I'm going to replace it with those curly brackets again, and then semicolon after the curly brackets. So now inside of the curly brackets, I can actually put inline instantiations of multiple objects. Now the markup for that is similar to what we have on 20 through 24, or 20 through 23. The difference is that I'm going to kind of back this up and bring the curly brackets and those initializers up to the same line. And then we don't have to declare an object variable for this object because we're just going to add it directly to the collection. So I'm going to drop this piece, and then this semicolon at the end, I'm going to get rid of that as well. And I'm just going to take this line of new user view model, and I'm going to place it inside of these curly brackets. So what will happen now is, we don't need that anymore, is that the user view model object will get created and added to the collection automatically. So that all happens basically in this kind of one initialization step. So if we want to add more than one, we'll just do comma, and then we'll do the same thing, new user view model, and then first name Steve, last name Jobs, email steve@me.com, and password of password. If we want to add an additional one, again just a comma, and I'll just copy and paste and update these fields. And we now have 3 objects in our collection. So now we simply take this collection of user objects and we'll return that as our view model. And we'll save. Now to create the view for this controller action, I'm going to right click and say add view. And it'll be named index because my action name is index. I'm going to use the empty template, but I'm going to use it with a model class. And the model class that I'm using is the same model class that I'm returning or passing in my action. So what I'm passing in as my view model is collection of users, and that is a list of user view model. So my model class will be a list of user view model. Now if I type that in and I hit tab, you'll notice that I'm not actually getting the add button like I would expect, and this is actually common. Typically the views are expecting to receive one model object, not a collection of model objects, so these little wizard helper windows don't always quite understand what we're doing. What I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to say my model class is a user view model, and you'll see that I get some auto completion and my add button lights up. So I'm going to go ahead and hit add. Visual Studio will build out that empty view for me, and we'll see here on line 1 that my model is a Module 6 models user view model. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this class name with list, and now my model is a list of user view models. Now accessing your model is the same as it has been before, so using the Razor syntax, it's simply at this.model and save. I'm going to go ahead and replay. And we'll see here now that everything loaded. And we do have a reference for this model. And what's happening is that the toString is being called on our model, and it's just outputting system.collection.generic list of model user view model. So our model is making it successfully from our view, or I'm sorry, from our controller action to our view. But having that output really doesn't do us much good. So to actually output the contents, let's go ahead and start by putting together some structure. And we'll use a table as a quick and easy way to do this. So just using your standard HTML, we'll set up some table tags. We'll go ahead and do a t-head, and then table row. And then inside of this row, we'll do header cells, and we'll do first name, last name, email, and password. So that'll be our header. And then we'll do a t-body for our table body. And in here we'll also be doing rows with those same cells. Now I'm just going to kind of carve these out, and you'll see why in just a moment. So what we'll do here is we're going to go ahead and wrap our tr inside of a for each loop, and we're going to be looping through our model for this view, grabbing each one of those user view model objects out of that collection. So we'll start here above the tr, and we'll do at for each, and then we'll do user view model. And you'll see here that we're getting the accelerator that's complaining that it doesn't know about user view model and that it wants us to then do the full reference. So we'll click that and it'll bring it in. And I'm going to call this user VM. That'll be my loop variable, and then I'll say in model. Model is the property off the view. So then I'll go ahead and drop down. I'm going to add my open curly bracket here, jump down to the bottom of my tr, and add my close curly bracket. So now inside of my TD, this is where I'm going to actually inject or insert my properties from my user view model object. So up above we have first name, last name, email, and password. We'll basically do the same thing here. So I'll say at uservm.firstname, and for speed I'll just copy and paste. So this will be .last name and email and password. So that should take care of it, and then we'll go ahead and hit play here again. And there is our output. So we now have our first name field, our last name field, email, and password. And there's first name, last name, email, and password listed all the way through. Now we can go one quick step further. If we jump back to our view, we can actually not just output the email address, but we can output the email address with a link tag. So we can say a tag, href, and this will be a mail to directive. And with the mail to directive, we're actually going to drop the email address in here. So we'll say at uservm.email and put that inside the quotes, and then we'll close our a tag, and then I'm going to take the back end of our a tag, I'm going to cut it and remove it and move it to the end here. So what will happen is that the uservm.email, the email address, will actually get inserted into the href tag, or the href part of the a tag, as well as be the actual linked text on our page. So we'll save that change, and then we'll jump back to our web page. And refresh. And we now have links. So one minor adjustment after that is we can go into our table and set our width to 100%. And that's again just kind of a formatting factor. F5, and that'll spread our columns out a little better so we can see everything. Looks like I have an additional tag I need to close, so we'll jump back here. Yep, I forgot to close my TD tag, so let me save. It should be a /TD. We'll save that change, come back, refresh one more time, and there's everything. So we have our rows of users with our individual objects. We have our properties being injected, and we even have a link out to our email addresses. So there's a little bit of formatting, getting things set up, and that was simply the process of utilizing our collection of view model objects. The process really can be used for anything. If you have maybe a view model that also has a collection inside of it, then you would start with your view model, and then you can go to that property off of your view model and then loop through that property that is a collection. So this is very flexible and very usable. So that is the process of going through and outputting values from a collection of objects.